is the Conservative Colonel Podcast with Harrison Dawes, where one man stands against the rising tide of liberalism. This officer in the battle to preserve our nation is the Conservative Colonel.
Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue.
And here's Harrison Dawes.
Welcome back to the Conservative Colonel Podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Dawes. Oh, it's been a minute. I deeply apologize. Work got crazy, and honestly, it hasn't slicked up. I'm filming this at 4:40 in the morning. This will be released in a couple hours as I'm recording. So it is what it is, but as I'll talk about at the closing of the show, there's a reason why I'm filming so late. There's a reason why I'm not, at my house right now sleeping when I have to get up at 6:20 to start my day. There's a reason for that, but we'll get into that in a second. I do have some new equipment. I finally have a professional mic. Yay. I finally got some extra money and I dove it into here. So hopefully I sound good. I'm coming in a bit more clear. Y'all need to let me know how I'm sounding, because I won't know until after the show, and I won't have time to stop and listen to this to do another take. So it's all live, baby. I say live. We never film the show live, but I usually do it in one take, simply because I feel like that's more organic. Y'all are getting a real version of me. I'm not doing this 15 times. But real quick, make sure you check us out on your podcatcher of choice. Our main platform is Spreaker, but we're also on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music and Audible, Cashbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser to listen notes and good pods. And of course, we release the video format of the show on Tuesdays on Rumble and YouTube. Now, because I've missed a couple, release schedules are going to be weird. I'm going to release a couple shorter episodes of stuff I really wanted to talk about, but because of work and because of just needing to play catch up with learning what's happening on a couple of these, they didn't release right away. Like the immigration issue in Mississippi, I really want to talk about how the Democrats are now shoving illegal immigrants into the state of Mississippi. And of course, I'm going to point y'all to a much better podcast show that's much better than me, which is Chris McDaniel's America. They did an episode on that a couple weeks back. So definitely listen to them. I'm going to plug it when I do that one, but that's an issue that's kind of close to my heart. It hits a bit close to home with it being in Mississippi, so I still want to talk about it. And the other extra episode, I don't know what it's going to be yet. It depends on how much information I can gather to do a talk. But we are coming up on our 25th episode, which will be releasing July 4th at 9 a.m. I have author and independent historian Ryan S. Walters on, and we have a great talk about the Constitution, the Electoral College, Jeffersonianism, the Republican Party, true conservatism, all that. It's one of my prouder episodes. Definitely probably in my top favorite of the work I have done this past year and a half on the show, which is crazy to think about that we're getting to that point. But we have been doing this for about a year and a half now, or for about 6 months, 7 months now. So it's kind of crazy to think, but yeah, that's how long we've been here doing this show now. Started back in November, and we'll be getting close to our 1 year mark soon. And again, I cannot thank you all enough for that. But yeah, that 25th episode is whew, it's one of my proud one. Definitely my top three that I've done so far. But also in my top three is last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago now almost, with Graves, episode 19. I think we knocked it out of the park. It was right when the Trump stuff hit the airwaves. We were, because of how filming fell that week with work, we were able to cover it the day after it happened. We were one of the first podcasters to cover it, and I think, in my opinion, definitely out of the ones I listened to, I think we were the first to cover it. So I take pride in that, being the first on the scene to report something truthfully, honestly, and give our opinion on it. So I honestly, I keep saying honestly, but I think it's one of my better ones. Grace and I knocked it out of the park. So yeah, definitely go check out episode 19 and mark your calendars for July 4th at 9 a.m., the 25th episode of the Conservative Colonel podcast. Now, of course, I get clogged up with allergies right before I'm filming this, so it's going to make my life so much more harder to do this. So I'm hoping I don't have to stop any. But here's the hoping that my allergies don't kick my butt as much as I think they will. Yeah, we've been doing the podcast for 8 months. I just checked it. Or it's been created for 8 months. We did take part of December and January off, all of January, because of my Christmas break. But a couple of stories I wanted to talk about, and let's just go ahead and dive right in, is for those who don't know, basketball is probably my favorite sport. Not probably, is my favorite sport. I love basketball. I still love playing basketball. Occasionally, I'll try to sit down and watch it, but politics has just corrupted everything, and you can't really get much enjoyment out of it sometimes. But luckily, college basketball, and I even go support my old high school team simply because it's at its purest. It's just kids playing the game, learning their craft, and having a great time doing it. And that's really what it's about, and winning. If someone joins a sports team not to win, then you're not going to. But something that came out, I'm a fan of a lot of franchises, but one of kind of the first ones I enjoyed was the Chicago Bulls and the Celtics. And for those who don't know, the Celtics are in the Final Four this year, playing to win the trophy, the world title. And something interesting happened with the Celtics, and I'm very proud of this. The head coach for the Boston Celtics was at a press conference. Coach Joe, I'm not even going to butcher his last name. Not with me feeling sick and clogged up and not really being able to hear myself now with having to put headphones on. So we'll leave that to everybody else. But Coach Joe was at a press conference, and of course, liberal media was trying to race bait him to make a sport about race. Now, you know, I love the sport of basketball, and I'm not trying to be that guy, but them trying to make it about race when 90% of the league is black, African American, they're in that category. It is 90% black. Last time I checked, there was a statistic that was done, but it was like 90% or something. Like it's very high. And they try to make this sport that should be a getaway Get away from all your problems. Just play the game. Sit back, relax. If you're a viewer, if you're playing the sport and your job is to play basketball, you're one lucky son of a gun, because I would kill for that job. I would kill Jack Fairchilds in his sleep. I want to throw that in there because I like messing jokes with Jack, simply because that's when I know he's watching and I can give him crap for not watching my show. Uh, Hi, Jack, from the Right Side Radio and Chris McDaniel's America. But yeah, he got this question, of course, trying to make this about race when honestly it's about everybody coming together and playing. But hats off to him for trying to race bait the guy, I guess. But they asked him, for the first time since 1975, this is the NBA Finals where you have two black head coaches going against each other. Given this, sometimes black head coaches in the NBA, I don't know if this article's misquoted this news reporter, but it's all over the place. Do you think this is a significant moment? Do you take pride in it? Or do you view this, or do you not see it at all? Or was the question asked? Of course, they're trying to make him be like, well, yeah, no, it's a historic moment. Again, the majority of the league is black. I love history making moments. I love my father telling me the story about the first ever black world heavyweight wrestling champion, pro wrestling. I'm a big pro wrestling fan, in WCW, which is, I'm going to go blank now. Ron Simmons. Yeah, that was him. Great story about that guy too. But I love stuff like that. But people nowadays seems to try to just find something. They're trying to find history making moments. They're not really talking about Clark bringing in some massive numbers for the WNBA. They're not trying to talk about that. They're trying to hide that. But they're going to focus on this. And his response was fantastic. And I wish more people would do that, because he doesn't see race. He doesn't see color. He doesn't see people from other countries, our walks of life. He sees children of God. Because he responded, Coach Joe responded, I wonder how many times those have been Christian coaches. And this news article here saying, perhaps implying that his identity as a Christian is more important than his skin color. And the article does like to mention that the room fell silent. He baffled these liberal reporters. They were like, well, we weren't expecting that. But that's a cool thing. I do identify as a Christian. I identify as a Mississippian. But in that, you never hear me identify as a white man. You just don't. Race is not really one of those things that I see as important. It's something that you're born with. You can't change that. You can change where you're from. I can move to Virginia and be like, well, I'm a Virginian. It's that simple. But, I take great pride from being from the great state of Mississippi. I love Mississippi. I will die in Mississippi, and when I'm dead, I'll be Mississippi dirt. But he decided to identify as the most important thing: children of God. We're all children of God. And being a child of God doesn't mean you have to have a certain skin color. It doesn't mean you have to have to be in a certain nation. And that's what I really like. And like, he identifies more as a Christian than a man of color. That is awesome. I give him props. I wish more people would not just see themselves as their race, but they're more than that. People need to understand we're all children of God. And if you're not a Christian, we're all humans. We're all people. And we are all something special. And you don't really need to put these dividers in front of us anyway. Now, politicians, the liberal media, want to put these dividers in because they want us to stay divided. They want white versus black. They want whatever race versus whatever race. They do it all the time. Why? Controversy creates cash, but also it makes people more easily controllable. That's what it is. And that's what they're wanting. They're wanting to control us. So we vote or do whatever they say. It's it's a sad thing, but I'm honestly proud of Coach Joe for standing up and saying, you know, I I don't care that this is the first time since 1975 that two black coaches are going head to head in the NBA Finals. I am a Christian. How many of those have been together as Christians going head to head? Again, no one responded, which is just awesome. And I wish more people would adopt his thinking. And really, this is more of a feel good story for me. I'm not really talking too negatively about everybody or the liberals. There's my warning to y'all. If y'all liberal, you might want to leave. But I do just enjoy the fact that he identifies as. It brought a smile to my face when I saw this story. And I think Jack covered it on one of his morning coffees with the Right Side Radio, which is a quick, good program for your mornings. If you take forever to get up like me, it's fantastic. I honestly drink it every day with my cup of coffee because it takes me 20, 30 minutes to wake up. And so right before I hop in the shower and kind of get dressed and ready for the day, I'll sit down outside with my dog, just drinking a cup of coffee, listening to the morning coffee. I want to say morning cup. I hope I'm not butchering your show, Jack. Either way, go support the Right Side. But this one just threw a big smile on my face, and I kind of wanted to talk about it because our next story is an interesting one. And we're going back to Joe Biden. Now, Hunter, as we all know, just got another guilty verdict. And I do want to spend an episode talking about Hunter simply because of just some of the crazy stuff he's in that I think is not talked about a lot. There are people that talk about it, but they really don't dive into it and give you, here's a crash course on what all Hunter Biden has been shown to have involvement in. Here's some speculation with good, reasonable evidence that suggests that he's in this, or the laptop. I've been begging and begging someone to tell me the whole story about the laptop. So I'm going to do an episode on Hunter. I'm doing an episode on Joe. But yeah, no, you were probably expecting me to talk about the guilty verdict of Hunter Biden. I'm not. I'm going to summarize it real quickly just because we have a bit of time for today's episode. I feel like more and more that I look at this, I get a weird feeling. Joe says he's not going to pardon him. I think, honestly, either way, he's going to get pardoned. Either Joe gets reelected and he doesn't have to worry about a reelection. So, yeah, he pardons him. Or Joe loses, but you still have a couple months in office. And people kind of forget that after the November election. People forget this person has December and the majority of January in office. So, honestly, I think Hunter's going to get pardoned either way. I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't. But I think I'm leaning more towards the fact that he's going to get pardoned either way. Joe seems, even though he's not all there, I mean, he seems like he cares about Hunter, which is also weird because I also think he doesn't. But I mean, just fatherly instinct. I mean, not a single father out there would bend the rules to help their own kid. And someone who has broke the rules as hard as Joe has will definitely be on his mind. But I do think he was more of a political sacrifice, a sacrificial lamb, because now, as soon as his conviction happened, all these liberal media are saying, well, see, this is proof that the justice system isn't corrupt. What Trump is saying is a lie. Because look, here's Hunter Biden. And the fact that they jumped on this immediately, like this story is still very fresh. It happened this week. And I mean, yeah, we've moved through the week, but I mean, the fact that that was the first thing they focused on, I think, speaks volumes. I think establishment media was waiting for this and almost knew that it was going to happen so they could say this. And I mean, Joe's been climbing the political ladder for 50 dead gum years. And I think the people closest to him was like, drop him. Let him get a guilty verdict. Maybe a couple years in prison will get him off his addiction. But, you know, they're also defending him tooth and nail, which I find funny. An actual person that has committed felonies, they're making excuses for. But what Trump has done is a misdemeanor. No, that's a hardcore felony, even though that y'all had to change it to a felony to charge him with it because it was originally a misdemeanor, as I said. But yeah, I find it just weird. None of this sits right with me, and really, none of the Biden family sits right with me at this point. Are the liberals? They seem like they are trying to play chess on a checkerboard. Like, it's very weird. It's like they miscalculate stuff, like with the Trump trial, which I honestly think if Trump wins, we can just blame it on the trial. Honestly, he had lost a bit of steam. Even I wasn't going to vote for Trump in 2024. I was honestly going to vote for Ron DeSantis. I think the Florida governor has done a phenomenal job leading Florida, the most conservative government the past couple years. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he's not got work to do. There's some things that I think he could do better on when it comes to real conservatism. But I mean, honestly, you look around, definitely the best conservative government. Sorry, I can barely breathe. I'm yawning now, joyful. But that's honestly who I gotta stop saying honestly. That's who I was going to vote for. I just thought he was the best guy for it. A lot of people before Trump started saying DeSantis was bad wanted Trump DeSantis 2024, which makes it absolutely hilarious to me how they all turned. But that's maybe an episode for another day because I do want to talk about Trump in a bit more detail. But nevermore. I wasn't going to vote for him. I was like, you know what? I just think DeSantis is a better place to go. He's young. He's pretty dead gum conservative, and we can have him for 8 years. So that's what I was thinking. But when this stuff started happening with the trial, I saw everybody I knew get fired up because they knew that the liberals was taking this misdemeanor and running with it. They were just going full steam ahead at it. And they weren't going to quit until they got what they wanted, which was to say that Trump is a convicted felon. Now, Trump has an appeal process, and so does Hunter, actually, now that I bring that up. But I honestly, with it so close to election, we don't know how it's going to end. Trump could win office and then be sent to jail, which would be crazy. But I wouldn't put it past them. It honestly depends on what court hears the case next with the appeal process and what they say and what they do, which, again, I think they have great ground to stand on. I am going to talk about Joe in a bit, but I am going to take a quick break because it is getting hard for me to breathe. My allergies are really bad this time of year, and they've been a bit worse this year. It's been harder for me to breathe. And talking is not helping. Talking a lot is just killing me. So I'm going to take a break, kind of breathe, pause a second. Y'all enjoy the commercial breaks. We will be right back. All right, welcome back to the Conservative Colonel podcast. I am Harrison Dawes, but I wanted to touch on that, and I got on a ramble like normal. We want to kind of try to power through this episode. Um, my allergies are making it harder to breathe than anticipated. This only really started acting up, of course, when I was about to film and finally got some work done on my own business. That as soon as I was able to be like, okay, well, I can do the show now, my breathing is all messed up. And because I'm at my makeshift office, I don't have my allergy medicine. So that's also a great thing. So I'm going to probably just hope for the best. And we're going to try to power through this. I'm going to try to at least hit the 50-minute mark. I don't like doing shows under an hour, but honestly, it's whatever I can throw out there at this point because this is rough. But something that happened over the week was the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and I found it very interesting. A day that we're honoring the greatest generation, and honestly, they are the greatest generation. They stood up to darkness itself and persevered and really put us on the map as a country as an example of freedom and took down true evilness. Sometimes in war, there's evil and then there's true evil. There's sometimes where, these people are just, they're just fighting a war. And then there are people that punish others, civilians, women, children, or commit genocide. And that's really World War II in a nutshell, is true evilness coming home and trying to take over the world. And the greatest generation stepped up big time to help win that war. And D-Day is maybe one of our country's finest hours. And instead of celebrating this great example of heroism, of veterans, to honor them for their sacrifice, to honor them for all they gave up to make sure not just we as Americans are free, but the whole world was free. Joe had to make it political. He couldn't just go there. I mean, I don't give Joe much credit. He's a walking dementia patient, but at least liberals, you could have just honored the veterans if you wanted a photo op. But no, you wanted a photo op and to make it your own. You couldn't even really give them a shining day, could you? There's always something that these people do, these liberal idiots. And celebrating D-Day is no exemption. Not only are the Democrats doing it, but liberal establishment media is also trying to push an agenda on this day, which I find very interesting. So first, Joe goes over there. He quotes Winston Churchill, which I find ironic. While I think Winston Churchill is a phenomenal leader, he is human. He did mess up. Look at the history books. He messed up a lot, big time. But he, during England's darkest hour, was the leader they needed. I have just started studying Winston Churchill as a historian, and I find him a very interesting man, someone we can learn from. And definitely, he is up there in England and honestly the world as a historical figure and leader. Again, one of the best we've produced in human history. I do think that. There's only a few people I'd put up in that category. But, they quote him. And I find it funny because, like, the last couple of years, liberals have been just tearing Churchill apart. I mean, just ripping him to shreds, man. Like, no holds barred. This man's going down. Do not look at this man as a leader. Don't look at him as a good person. He's just evil. I don't know where they get it from, honestly, but they did. And so Joe quoting Winston Churchill is like me being like, well, what? Like, when I read that article, my head snapped. I was like, and not to mention, I think he even quoted Ronald Reagan, which is a bigger head scratcher. And really, it's honestly one of the things that I probably disagree with Ronald Reagan. One of the few. Let's see if I can find it. I remember it. Isolation. America not being involved everywhere, and America, not being sent out as the world's police force, not, basically us focusing on ourselves and not really focusing on the rest of the world, which, I still honestly go back and forth on that. But I do not agree with the current stance, which we are the world's police and we have to go everywhere and help everybody. There are plenty of other countries that can help out. And we seem like to always be the one footing the bill, sending the soldiers, sending the weapons. And I'm like, we're not the only country. There are so many others that could help. First off, we're in debt, so we shouldn't be sending anybody money. We can't even send ourselves money. We can't even secure our own border. But, talking about Ronald Reagan, again, that's probably one of the things I would say I differ from Ronald Reagan. Still a great conservative, but how do I say it? But this is something again I disagree with, and of course Joe Biden's trying to put this back to the dead gum Ukraine. We have to send money to stop the evil Russians. And that's honestly basically a summary of the second half of his speech. Was basically to America, but he's not in America, he's in France. Talking about us sending more money to the Ukraine because we can't let evil win. We have to have democracy all over the world. First off, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. We are not controlled by the mass crowd. Everybody has a rough equal standing. The Electoral College is put in place so Texas, California, and New York don't run the country. If you wanted true democracy, where everybody gets a vote, we go by popular vote, well, unless you live in Texas, New York, or California, you're not making the decisions of the country. That's all it would take, but nevermore. We're a constitutional republic. We're a republic. Say it with me. But that's not the point of the speech. It's basically him trying to give a rah-rah to us sending more money to the Ukraine, us getting involved with Russia, where we honestly don't need to. Like, could you imagine us fighting a war with Russia right now? Russia's army isn't the best in the world, but neither is ours right now. Let's be honest. We're more worried about renaming military bases and having a transgender general or crap making the uniforms rainbows at this point. We're not ready for that. But that's what Joe wants. These dead gum warmongers They know they'll make a lot of money off war, so they try to almost get us in any conflict that they can find. And, Trump is the first person to not get us into a new conflict since like Bill Clinton, I think. Maybe it goes back even farther. But Joe can say he hasn't, but basically he's saying it unofficially because he's getting us heavily involved with the Ukraine. I think we're even sending weapons over there on their like the country borders to bomb Russia. And we're like, well, we won't bomb Moscow. I'm like, well, I'm sure they'll appreciate that. But taking a day to honor the men that sacrificed it all is just weird. And yeah, like there's even a report where I'm reading this that Joe Biden fell hard on quoting Reagan and not really doing what Reagan did years ago when Reagan stood there. It was basically trying to aligned we are, aligned we will stay, united we stand, divided we fall. It's this type of crap. Trying to basically make sure we stay evolved overseas and basically pushing his own political agenda while comparing Trump to Hitler. Let me not forget that. I'll give him some little smivel of credit that he didn't name Trump by name, but he compared him to Hitler at one point. And I'm pretty sure he did that with Vladimir Putin as well, compared him to Hitler. Of course, establishment media pointing to Trump and being like, Hitler, 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 Hitler is getting old. Orange man, bad. Old elderly dementia patient, good. I don't care what y'all say at this point. Y'all obviously have a bias against the man. But that's what they're doing. I do want to point out that every article I've read about Joe Biden's speech brings a point that Trump didn't visit some cemeteries on D-Day or do his D-Day speech, which they're trying to say Trump doesn't care about veterans is what they're doing. And I think it's falling flat on their face because Trump didn't do it because of weather. That's what he cited. I honestly was just getting into politics when Trump was president, so I don't know what happened exactly. And I wasn't going to dig down that rabbit hole because traditional media makes it hard to do research because of all the lies. But I mean, y'all are just picking up straws at this point, trying to find anything that you can throw at Trump to throw at him. And it's sickening because we should be taking that day to honor the veterans. D-Day, 80 years. That's crazy to think. And they're still the greatest generation. Still heroes. Still men that sacrificed everything. And I hope that they are never forgotten. I'm a historian, so I spent the day just, in somberness, kind of thinking about them as the day went on and kind of taking a moment at the end of the day to think about them. Because they did do something phenomenal and they deserve recognition. And it's sad that the Democrats have turned this into a political bargaining chip, a stage to say your platform, to attack your political opponent, and to push your agenda. No, sir. No. That was a stage to honor them, and that's it. You should be ashamed. You should. There's one thing I take serious, and that is veterans. All right. Before I work myself up anymore, we'll see if I can last 10 minutes, and we'll wrap this episode up because As you can tell, I'm already out of breath again. It's only going to get worse, so we're going to fight through it. But, you know, a couple episodes ago on the morning coffee with the right side, Jack talked about, why we fight or why not to stop fighting. And last episode, me and Graves talked about if you don't hear this call, it is the time to stand up and fight. And I kind of want to dive back into that as we wrap up this episode of the Conservative Colonel podcast. We fight for a lot of reasons. All of us are doing something. I'm probably not the best public speaker. I know, shocking, right? I love to talk, but I'm not very articulate. I have a lot of redneck sayings. I ramble. I cover the same point a lot of times, as many of our listeners know. I mispronounce things. And I don't know if I'm going to get involved in politics other than this. But the Conservative Colonel podcast, is what I'm contributing. I'm not the biggest show, but I hope I can be the show that if someone doesn't know what's happening, they can listen. If someone wants a deep dive episode, just like the Hunter Biden laptop, or just Joe Biden in general, or Roger Wicker, that episode I did on him, if I can just be that, I'm happy. I would love to get, turn this into a living. Oh gosh, would I? But it's probably not going to happen. If it does, I'll be happier than a pig in crap. But, I'm content with this. There's a reason why I'm doing this at 5:20 in the morning. I can barely breathe. I honestly probably should have taken this week off too, with how much work I've had to do with my allergies. I'm sick. I'm almost running a fever. All the stuff that's been happening personally. It's been a couple weeks. When I talked to y'all on episode 19, that was it. That was the peak for a while. But the reason I stand up and do this is not even for myself, but I look at future generations. I look at my son, my grandson, my family. What will I leave them? If I can see a future for myself where I'm not welcomed in my own state, my own country, where I'm going to have to live as a shut-in, where our country has fallen into a true dictatorship-like democracy, where the liberals and the fake Republicans all run us into the ground and make the country collapse. If I can see that in my lifetime, what about theirs? And will we even be able to continue the family farm that's been going on for 200 years? Or close to it, actually, yeah. But what will I leave behind? Again, if I can see this stuff in my lifetime, what's 40 years down the road? What's 60 years down the road? Be 80. What am I leaving the next two generations? What am I leaving? I think what they're calling Generation Alpha or Generation Beta. What will life be like for them? And it honestly worries me. And so that's why I stand up and fight. That's why I'm asking y'all to join me. That's why I'm asking, if you listen to our last episode, episode 19, go listen to it now if you haven't. But we talked about it. It's time to stand up. Either you do something like I'm doing and just try to get the real meaning of conservatism out there with everybody, shining light on the dark areas of traditional media and showing the hypocrisy of the liberals, trying to hold these fake Republicans accountable for their actions. You can do that. You can run for office. You can politic, knock on doors, hand out flyers, make sure people are voting. There's so many things you can do that's not time consuming or very time consuming. Or you don't want to put yourself out there, but you want to put yourself out. There's a lot of things you can do to help this fight. And the reason this fight's so important, the reason, again, I'm up at, almost 5:30 and can barely breathe. I probably sound awful. This is going to be one heck of an episode. I'm probably going to text about this in a couple hours. What the heck is this crap? But, if I can see that now, then it's past time to fight. People like Chris McDaniel and Jack have been fighting for 15 years. Sometimes you get knocked down. You got to learn to pick yourself back up. You got to learn to keep fighting. There have been plenty of times already in my short political career where I'm involved in politics where I've been like, okay, I do not feel like doing an episode this week. I do not feel like getting up and knocking on doors. I do not feel like dealing with it after a stolen election or what have you. I hope y'all didn't hear that. I'm still testing out the mic and I didn't get time to mute both of them. But, that cough made me lose track. But I get the negative impact it has on people. When you hear about crap and you hear about bad things day in and day out, it affects you. People talk about the news. All we hear about is just crime and awful things happening to people. And it has a very harsh impact on them. I get it. But take a break. Regain your composure and get back out there. Because this is important. It is very important. If you want a free America, it's very important. And I hope, if anything, with this podcast, if I can just light the spark in a couple people that are going out there and changing the conservative world, which changes the American world and makes us a better country, brings back real conservative values, and gets us back on track, I will be happy. I would have done my part to the best of my abilities. And I don't know what my part is. I don't know where I'll be doing in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Heck, I don't know what I'll be doing next month or next week. But whatever I do, I hope you join me. Leave a 5-star review. Share our podcasts out. That would help me a bunch because I don't like overly promoting it. I'll promote it a couple places. Every time I have an episode I think I really did good on, I'll share it out a bit more. But I'm not a bragger about myself, or I try not to be. So please share this out. Leave us a 5-star review on every podcast platform. Hey, but most importantly, get involved in the fight. And I will see you guys again soon. I hope to be hitting your airwaves very soon again. Hopefully, I'll feel better by Monday, and I can knock out 2 episodes for y'all next week. And hopefully, I'll be a bit more cheerful, and we can hit the hour mark. I don't think there's anything else I need to talk about other than, please check out the 25th episode of the Conservative Colonel podcast coming at you July 4th at 9 a.m. We will have Ryan S. Walters on to talk about so much conservatism, true conservatism, Jeffersonianism, the Electoral College, the Constitution, and just politics in general. It's a knockout out of the park. I think it is definitely some of my best work. Definitely up there in the top 3 of the best conservative podcast episodes I think we've done. And of course, make sure to check us out on Spreaker, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Audible, Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Listen Notes, and Good Pod. Whew. But if you want to check out our video format of the show, you can check us out on Rumble and YouTube. And if you're having trouble finding any of this, go to www.conservativekernel.com. That's our website, and it will have everything you'll need to know there. Even a cool email the host button. Hey. So I'll check you guys out later. Have a good week. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless Mississippi.